thank you, of the of our conference, and to introduce to you Professor Jerzy Hausner. I hope you will be able, to see both of us on the screen. With the lecture and presentation entitled Culture and Development. Short remark, we started today with a presentation of Śnieżka Kwatflich-Michajlowicz on putting cultural heritage in the heart of European Green Deal. And to a certain extent, the main idea of Śnieżka's presentation was very positive and was asking to put cultural heritage in the heart of our, or in the very center of our talk concerning the change toward a green Europe. I think that what I read from the abstract of Professor Hausner, there is a similarity in the approach and in thinking about more broadly than cultural heritage, but because about culture. But I don't want to be very long. Want to introduce Professor Hausner, who is the Professor of Economics and Chairman of Open Eyes Economy Summit Program Council, which is one of the most important events in Central Europe concerning economy of value, a completely new notion of looking at society and the economy as a world of values. Professor Hausner was former Deputy Prime Minister responsible for economic issues and labor and social economy, was a member of Monetary Policy Council, and is also a member of High-Level Industrial Roundtable Industry 2030. Dear Professor, the screen is yours at the moment. I do recommend everybody to ask questions in the chat. We will be after presentation. We will be reading them and try to answer. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this important event. And I was asked to give a presentation, kind of a lecture, titled Culture and Development. I will base my lecture on my recent book, The Social Space-Time of Economic Activity Towards Economics of Values, and especially on the very last chapter of this book, titled Culture as the Way Out of Crisis. When I was writing this chapter and I was writing the book, I didn't know that we are approaching pandemia, coronavirus pandemia, that we will envisage such a troublesome way out of this crisis. I was discussing crisis in general, but what I had in mind as an economist, it was of course global financial crisis and the aftermath of this particular crisis. And I think that my way of thinking is even more important now because of the character of the modern time of nowadays. I took as motto, also for my book, it's not motto just for this lecture, a thought which was wrote down by Lester C. Charrow in 1996. And I think that it's really important. He's discussing what happened why in the Middle Ages the people of this time, even they had all technologies, all facilities which were discovered, introduced, and implemented in the Roman Empire, they couldn't use it for the benefit of society, for the benefit of development. And his answer is that they didn't have the values to generate the organizational abilities which are needed to use this technology, these facilities, this infrastructure. And I think that it's very important to understand that technology doesn't work on its own. And if we make a distinction between culture and technology, sooner or later we will come into very thorough difficulties. So this is the beginning why I'm discussing the issue of culture in the context of development, in the context of economic issues. When we discussed any particular crisis and we took into consideration the past experience, pretty often I have a feeling, I realize that we are looking to find a solution between the state and the market. And this is a scheme which closes our thinking. One stream of modern thinking is we need more market. The second stream is we need state involvement. And I think that this oscillation is oscillation between one wall and the second wall, and it's not a real looking for something new. We do not search a new way, thinking only about the state or about the market. And therefore, I use this phrase, culture as the way out of crisis, of any particular crisis. I think that the culture is also a way of crisis in the situation of individual, in the depression, in the crisis of our own life. That if we would like to find a way out, we should refer to culture. Of course, we may discuss how to understand the culture in this particular situation. But anyhow, if we do not find reflection on culture, reflection of sense of our life, we will not find a way out of critical situation. And therefore, my major issue, my major intellectual problem is how transform the rebelling consumers into active citizens, but the citizens understood as participants of culture and development, and not only as participants of so-called civic society and the political system. Why this crisis is something particular? I use this picture which I think give us a real strong impression that we are within something what I would like to call megacrisis. It's not only pandemic, it's not only recession, and it's not even climate change. We are in a situation when different kind of shocks and crises happen together. And even we will approach to one issue, then the problem is coming to us from another angle. From the early beginning, when we discussed in my country, in Poland, how to tackle the issue of pandemic, I was saying, without economic security, we will not protect health security. And this is not opposition. We have to discuss how to link health security with economic security, how to link it, how to avoid what happened afterwards, just chaotic introducing of lockdowns and chaotic lifting up lockdowns again and again, without giving people a real stable or in a certain sense, stable conditions to adjust on your own, to find their own way to deal with the situation. And I think that is also because we discussed the issue not from the angle I would like to see this discussion. I was introduced as the chairman of the Programming Council of the Open Ice Economy Summit. By the way, we are together in the same council, so I'm pleased that you are also taking part in this event. For the sixth time we will organize our summit in Krakow this year. I will invite you at the end of my lecture. But this logo of Open Ice Economy Summit is something when I had started 7 years ago to discuss with my colleagues, with my collaborators, with other people, how to understand the situation, how to find a way from the crisis, which we understand now much more. And we started from the opening eyes. Open your eyes and try to realize what is going around. This is a logo of our movement, because Open Ice Economy is not only a congress, a summit, but it's an intellectual and social movement. The basis of the discussion relations between culture and development is a division which I took from the Polish philosopher Władysław Tatarkiewicz, somebody who is very intellectually important in my personal development. And he said, let civilization means everything that mankind has created, added to nature to make life easier and better, and that many people have in common. And let culture mean the experiences and activities of the individual people who have founded civilization and benefit from it. This distinction do not oppose culture and civilization, but this distinction say us, if we take as civilization all the material environment and culture as all the intellectual spirit environment of our activity, major problem of development is how to find relation between civilization understood in this way and the culture understood in this way. So each society in which time has to find a way to link civilization and culture. And the dominant mechanism of the interaction which was created by this society is given particular favorable or unfavorable conditions for the development of this particular society. So it's our major task to find a proper relation. So I do not counterpose, I looking for coexistence and interaction. And I'm saying that some form of independence, some forms of these relations, they create a beneficial interdependence. Some, they divide civilization and culture. And when civilization and culture is divided, we do not link them. Sooner or later, technology will dominate the society. The culture becomes threatened by civilization. And in this way, this is opposition of what I'm looking for. I'm looking situation in culture is giving something additional to what we are capable of create through material changes. Without the cultural contribution, sooner or later, what will create materially will dominate us and will not allow us to develop, to find a way to react on new shocks, new challenges, new crises. Why culture? Somebody would like to say, why not religion? I'm not opposed And I wouldn't like to discuss here about the significance of religion, which in this division of Władysław Tatarkiewicz is part of culture. But why culture? Why particularly culture? Nicolas Bourriaud, and here is his photo, and also his important thought, is saying, art and culture produce a relational space-time elements, interhuman experiences trying to rid themselves of the straitjacket of the ideology of mass communication, in a way of the places where alternative forms of sociability, critical models, and moments of constructed conviviality are worked out. What does it mean? If we are in a crisis situation, as we are now, we have to change our social relations. How to change social relations? From above? By fiat, or through finding by individuals new way of thinking, new cognitive perspectives, new meanings, and everything what I say here is a culture understood as the activity of individuals who are creating together something what is a conviviality, relation between them. So they are looking for something which is an axionormative basis of their action. So they are looking for the answer, what kind of solution we need, why we need this solution, and not only how it works. How it works we can find in another way. But if we do not have this orientation, which are saying about the aim, then of course we are trying everything, but we'll never find a way out. What is going when we divide civilization and culture, when the technology dominates our activity? This is also the case of digital economy. This is also the case of this phase of information society. I think that in this situation, we are living in the world, in the social world, which is work according to regressive spiral development. So I'm saying development has spiral nature. Development is not a relation of any particular actor, action, of any particular activity. Development is something what emerges from activities of different actors, working together, thinking together, creating our imagination, our imaginary together. If it doesn't work, then the society is going in this sense, in a cultural sense, down. But this is also cumulative process. So why we have this spiral, regressive spiral? Because of the lack of proper cognitive tools, the proper understanding of the nature of the crisis we are approaching, we are living together. What is the alternative? What is the way to development? What is a developmental spiral? Here it's very important time dimension appears here. So discussion about hic and nunc, discussion only about what to do now and here is not enough. We have to create much longer perspective, much longer horizon. A much longer horizon means that we are discussing about time, about the future, taking responsibility, not only acting, not only reacting, but taking responsibility. We feel that we have created our future. Our future is the way we will do will create a way to the future. So thinking in this way, we create new opportunities of action and also new relations which stabilize this action. And it's irreversible process, it's irreversible change. It's a risky way, but this is the only way to find a proper solution, to find a way to the future. This slide and this picture was discussed by a group of experts which discussed the issue of shrinking cities. According to their booklet, I took from this booklet of Hans Schlapper, one of the major author of this booklet, this picture which is saying 40% of European towns are shrinking cities. So are towns of shrinking opportunities. And the question is how to change the regressive spiral into developmental spiral. How to find this moment in which we are not only growing, but we are developing, finding new ways of action, new relations, losing some of our potential. For example, population. We may find other way to use the potential which is still at place. How to find in the situation when, for example, your steel works, your coal mines are going down because of changes. How to find a way for North Rhine-Westphalia, for east to west England. All those cases were in a history were discussed and experienced. Some of them, they are positive. Why they find a way? Because they approach not only to material issues, not only to technologies, but also to social relations, understanding, meaning, cooperation, to what is a part of culture. So we have to think together to find a way how to use what is at place, because if not, then everything will go down, to the very down. Why people are capable of thinking in this way and acting in this way? Only if their social space-time is open. What it means that our social space-time is open? Closed social space-time means hegemony of a single time-based and cognitive perspective. Coal is the only solution for Silesia in Poland. Coal is the only solution for energy production and energy base of the Polish economy. When we think in this way, we will never make any kind of transformation until the very end, until the collapse. But when we open our times, the space-time, social space-time, then we are looking for various perspectives, not for one particular, one which is given, one which is dominant, one which was used so often. We have to think in another way, to adopt another possibilities. We are looking, we are in a certain sense experimenting, but also trying to deal with the issue. This picture means that we have only one window. It's not window of opportunity. This window means our cognitive perspective. We are thinking in the very schematic way. What does it mean, open social space-time? That we open different windows. And those windows are not open only by us, but also through discussion with other people, taking into consideration their perspective. Also those who were excluded so far from the decision-making process, from the possibility to give a contribution to our action. So it's not to say okay, let's change this cognitive perspective into another one, because this one means more suitable to our situation. No, this is a discussion that we have linked different perspectives to find something will open our eyes and also open our minds, because it also opens the way to different kind of actions. When the social space-time is closed, mentally closed, not only politically closed, but first of all mentally closed, the fundamental behavior is a struggle for domination. In the closed space-time, people behave struggling for domination, struggling for division of existing assets. But when we would like people to look for solutions and not only to have 0-1 games, we have to open the social space-time, to ask them, to invite them to work together to find new solutions, new approach to given problems. And if so, we have to use imagination. Imagination is the basis. Therefore, I use very often this notion, social imaginary or economic imaginary. When people, they ask me how to change this, what is doing, I'm saying, don't start from instruments, don't start from tools. Start from the way people think about good economic activity. Try to show them that what they think that it's a proper solution is not giving a chance. So let's create something what is a formative discourse. Let's use our imagination. And culture is a way to imaginations. Different languages culture use, different languages. They are needed also to understand the problem. One of the language I try to use is visualization of the way I think. Because I would like to convince people, not saying, I have a truth, I got a truth, I know better, believe me, trust me, vote for me. But I'm trying to invite them to my way of thinking, but if I would like to be, if I would like them to be in my way of thinking, I have to be in their life and in their way of thinking. So imagination is needed, and imagination is activated by culture. But I would like to say, it doesn't mean that culture all the time works. Also, it works only when the culture is a living culture, which is not dominated by totalitarian ideology. Culture dominated by totalitarian ideology, as in the case to a very much degree in Poland. And the culture is used as a political tool. Of course, will not fulfill this role. Why I emphasize the open social space-time? Because what I discuss here as the way of crisis is a way of taking responsibility, not putting responsibility on somebody else, but voluntarily taking responsibility. And without the open social space-time, I'm sure that the responsibility will be not shared, will be not taken. It is not accepted as the way to cooperate. Let me, for a moment, put my step into a very important, from my point of view, very important interview given by Pope Francis last year. Because I would like now move to show you how my way of thinking works in practical terms to the problem of urban development. So, 2 sentences taken from this lecture. The degradation of our urban environment is a sign of cultural exhaustion. It's very important. If we ask why our environment is in such bad shape, the answer given here by Pope Francis is we lost our culture, our living culture. We lost our cultural assets, our cultural capital. And the second sentence, we must dignify the peripheral areas of our cities, integrating them by means of social policies that recognize the value and the cultural contribution that they can make. It's very important here, these peripheral actors, peripheral areas, and their cultural contribution which is needed to develop the city as the whole. The city not as urbs, but also as civil society. One of the issues I pretty often discuss within the open eyes economy scheme is the issue of climate change and the consequences of climate change for our cities. One of the issues which is a very hot issue is urban heat island. Big cities are heat islands. The average temperature in big cities is 2 degrees higher than in environment, than outside. Of course, how we react, because we can't stop the climate change, but we have to adapt. So what people discuss is blue-green infrastructure in cities. I am giving you 2 examples. One is from Milan. Those are big condos building by foreign capital, or at least by investors. And who is living in this, in these apartments? Of course, not citizens of the city. There are people who bought this, or sometimes they even didn't buy it, but they stay for a while. And those buildings are really blue and green. In a certain sense, they're intelligent. Does it change really the situation of the city, or only the situation of themselves? So they have the comfortable solutions, but still, cities which will react in this way, they will be heat islands. And here you have another example coming from Sweden, from Malmö. When you have different blue-green parks around the settlements. But what is very important, here is a picture of a girl, here taking part of the responsibility, educating others, because they play there, but also they protect this environment. And of course, what it means here, that this is also a kind of retention. This is not only a comfortable situation for the settlement, but this is also retention of the city, which is not, in the previous example, a real solution. Let me move to an example which is much more near those 2 thoughts I took from Pope Francis. This is the synthesized solution for Medellin, the city which was in a terrible situation, in a terrible collapse. And here are axes of action by Mayor Fayardo, who changed the city in a relatively short time. And they were 8 axes of his action: culture, creation, human spirit, entrepreneurship, innovation, high-quality public education, learning, new public spaces, knowledge, justice and security, new public space and other infrastructure, living together, recreation, sports, mobility, shared budget, participation, integral urban projects, and innovation. Take into consideration those axes from my point of view: civilization and culture. All the time you have both together. So this is the way how he linked something what is material, infrastructural, conditional, with something what is essence of the activity of people. So not only walls, but also meanings, relations, actions. And it changes really the city. So it's not division of the city into areas, into districts. It's not division into the sector of city hall, but it's a discussion about the development, how to move forward, how to this regressive spiral substitute by the development spiral. And if we come one step further, so when we realize that this way of thinking about the modeling and the development of the city, being in a really difficult, critical situation, was the discussion, for whom is the city? Who is the owner of the city? Who is the most important in the city? And the answer is citizens. Not tourists, not investors, not clerks, not mayor of the city. Citizens, because their creative potential is needed to change the situation. And therefore we discuss within the open ICE economy framework the question of right to the city. At right to the city we do not interpret in this way that this is a privilege given by the city hall or the authorities to the citizens. It doesn't work in this way. The right to the city means in practical terms that the city is developed on the basis of creative potential of its citizens. But if this creative potential disappears, over-tourism is one of the examples of the way how the creative potential disappears. Collapse of the industrial cities is another example of this regressive spiral. Whenever we discuss of any city, of shrinking city because of population, of industrial cities which went out from this, from the potential, the over-touristic cities or historic cities, we have to say the only way to find a way to develop a spiral is creative potential of the citizens of this city. If this potential is not, it doesn't work, nothing will work. And I may give very negative examples in which a lot of capital was invited to change the situation and it never worked. Also the thinking about the culture by the star architecture monuments, they are very rare examples that it worked for a moment, it worked for a while. Of course, I'm not against it as a point action, but this is not the way to change the situation. So the right to the city is a complex issue, discussed as the way how to understand the relation between urbs, the city as walls, and the civitas, the city as the community. How to find a way in which citizens of the city, they understand that this is their city, their life, their faith. How they would like to be engaged, to be involved, how they would like to take responsibility, to share responsibility with others, how they would like to change the situation. And right on the city means how to solve it in practical terms. Therefore, if we would like to create conditions for the right to the city, the problem is how to develop the social space-times, urban social space-times, so how to refer to the cultural aspirations of the citizens, also to the heritage. Heritage understood as assets. Heritage is not giving us answers. It's giving us a lot of questions. But without understanding the nature of these questions, we will not find proper answers. Heritage is something what is a common asset. It's some kind of public good when we realize how to deal with. Not only how to protect, but also how to rethink, how to regenerate. This way, regeneration is very important because it means that we are coming to the roots, but not to cut roots, not to go outside the roots, but we would like to come back to the moment in which the roots will work for the future, not only for the past. As Jacek Purkla is saying, the past has a future. It's very important for the future. Therefore, it's very important to understand the major issue is the question of relation between intangible and tangible resources. The whole discussion about civilization and the culture is discussion about tangible and intangible resources. How to find a proper relation, proper link. And if we do not keep the assets which are intangible, if we do not open the way to cultural assets, to cultural capital, if we allow for expropriation of culture, we allow for expropriation of tangible. The beginning of expropriation of something what is tangible, the beginning of the situation in the center of the city, which was the center not for citizens but for tourists, is the beginning of the expropriation of knowledge and cultural capital. If we do not, if we allow for this, at the end of the day, the city is not the city of the citizens, the city of investors, the city of other actors. And what is very important, the discussion about tangible and intangible asset is not discussion about only discussion about the problem of property. The discussion of property understood as the right to property was a discussion of 19th century, discussion of everything what is material, tangible. Let's discuss what is much more important now. Discuss how to not allow for expropriation of something what is intangible. And when in the previous time, discussion about the commons was the discussion from commons to something what is a pool of common assets to commoning, now I think that the problem is from commoning to commons. If we do not share knowledge, if we do not share culture, if we do not share something what is intangible, at the end of the day we will never share something what is tangible. The beginning of the solution is discussion about culture and knowledge. And once again, the question of property, and especially property understood and the property rights, should be also discussion about commitment. And especially if we discuss property of intellectual assets, we have to discuss about the commitment. If we do not discuss about the commitment, we allow people to use something what is discovered by one against those who discovered. So our creativity is working against us. It's a new way of alienation. It's a common situation recently when somebody expropriates us from our creativity and also will expropriate us from our material basis. Let me move to some major conclusions. So, mainstream economics, which has dominated economic education and research for decades, is fundamentally acultural. And as such, it is unable to appreciate that the economy remains rooted and coded in culture. Culture, in order to thrive, must be an open space of sense-making social interactions. And in order for this to be the true, it must be simultaneously an axiological interpretative and communicated space, as well as a space of exchange, but not only of market exchange. This approach makes it apparent how narrow and destructive is to reduce culture as a particular type of economic activity, namely creative industries. Instead of narrow-mindedly reducing culture as a single part of the economy, we should look at the economy as a culture. Economy has to be a culture. Economy not being a culture is not economics of values. It's an economics of greed. Only then we will find a path leading from the culture to development, both for individuals and the society at large. And only then will we correctly interpret the relation between civilization and culture, recognizing that the economy, in order to develop and benefit the society, must be both civilization and culture. And if we consider the current crisis to be a crisis of market civilization, because I discuss it as a crisis of market civilization, then in order to find a way, we must surely look to culture, understood not in economic, but in anthropological terms, in a social sense. Only in this way can alternative thinking gradually emerge and become the basis for a deep transformation of our civilization. I use pretty often this picture to explain my basic way of thinking. If we discuss about the treetop, upper branches of this tree, and we would like to know under which conditions the tree is healthy and is developing, the answer is in roots, in heritage, in culture, in something what is much deep. We do not go there because we think that it's work on its own. No, we have to discover all the time those roots of our activities. Civilization is based on culture. So, thank you for your attention. I would like to invite you for Open Eyes Economy Summit in November in Krakow, 16th, 17th. And once again, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much. I think it's a wonderful finish of this very day. In the morning, we have been asking the questions about the nature of development and its components. In fact, we received an answer just now. And also, there were. I think that we have been able to observe a lot of similarities between morning keynote speaker and Professor Hausner as togetherness, longer time scale, culture and sense of stewardship, and embedded knowledge, meaning roots, as something that we shall not just protect but fertilize and really take care of to be able to profit in general. I think that there are no questions as so far. There are just thanks for a great lecture. But if I may ask, sometimes your statement seems like being a utopian, but I also think that we need a kind of utopia to see. To try to build a model that we shall approach. Do you think that mentally we are able to change the attitude? Because I think that there's a lot that is really inside every single man and woman to overcome our I don't know, our rituals and our up-to-date education or our daily habits?
I do not refrain, so I do not oppose to call it as utopia, and I think the utopia is better than dystopia.
Dystopia.
Much better, because in dystopia we have less energy, less possibilities, less faith in our future. And utopia is giving us something what is also giving us hope. But I don't think that this is purely utopian way of thinking, because I'm giving a particular example. Medellin is not a question of something what is outside experience. We have experience. We are describing as a researcher how it worked. In a certain sense, in a moment of collapse, in a moment when the regressive spiral is going absolutely down, people in a very extreme situation, they found a way. But thinking in this way. So I'm not saying, let's do what they did. Let's think in this way, because if you do not think in this way, you will not find what is a proper reaction to your problem. So let it be utopia.
Yeah.
Problem is that without opening our minds, without the mental opening, we'll be in a situation when we try many, many things. At the end of the day, we'll have no energy to try more.
Yeah, that's true. I see there is no questions on the chat. Probably our followers are a bit tired after the whole day of sitting in front of the computer screen. So Professor Hausner, thank you very much. It was inspirational, and it was, I think, made us a great time to listen, especially the issues of what you have described, or I can describe as DNA of a city, which we also have to, if a city wants to, let's say, regenerate, it has to look for its internal DNA and work on that. And if we say city, because this is the end, the end of this day, we just listened to the last lecture. I would like to invite you for tomorrow's morning. Yes, great. there is one question. Michał asks, thanks for mentioning the shrinking cities. I was wondering if we can reverse this process when the real estate is 100% profit-oriented.
I think that the basis of this question is the problem of commercialization of the space of the city. If the commercialization, especially center of the city, is going so rapidly as it many cities, that at the end of the day, of course, it means the way to collapse. So the problem is not only about thinking about, if we discuss the profit orientation or efficiency orientation, if we discussed about only the budget of the city and the income, revenues of the city in a short term, In a certain sense, we may say, okay, without these revenues, we will not make many transportation investments. So we need more and more investors. But we do not understand that when you commercialize the space of your city, it doesn't mean that you create development. You create revenues, but not development. It's not the same. Therefore, I'm not against private investments and partial commercialization, but if the commercialization exclude our social forces and other economic actors, then at the end of the day, the center of the city looks like many centers of the city which are out without any living citizens. And this is the way to collapse.
Well, we are sitting in Kraków, just at the heart of the city, around at the main market square, and this is the case where nearly 90% of the property within the planted green belt, so within former city walls, is in fact private property. And we have been observing that process of total commercialization of the city.
The problem is not only private property, but whose property, and what is how the property is used. What is way to use the property?
But and what is I think the biggest problem is that on one hand there is a total conflict of interests here in the city center, because citizens are expressing themselves very openly that they want the city back, but property owners are totally on the side of profit making. And and it's again probably a bit utopian, but in the end, nobody would like to live and come here if we will have just scenography here in the city center. Because what really matters and what is attractive for the people is the uniqueness, originality, genius loci, something that is spiritual, and even something that is not easily to describe. But I think that at the moment, the process of privatization, at least the Kraków city center, is, let's say, not reversible.
One example, which is very important, and it happens pretty often, is something what in Kraków was Dolne Młyny. The situation in which young citizens, they found their place, they took responsibility, they invite other people, they organize the space. Many other people, it was a very popular place of meetings of young people, their place. They feel that this is something for us, not far from the market square, the place for tourists, not for them, too expensive. When the capital and investors realize that there are so many young people, they are coming, step by step, they took control over this place. These young people, they will find another space in the city, maybe a bit far from the center. But what does it mean? That they are moved out. That they are moved out. At the end of the day, they will not feel it's my city. This means that their creative potential will be not used for the benefit of the city.
Well, you describe exactly the process of gentrification. I mean, any area with some, let's say, history behind, or with heritage values, is populated or is used, was taken over by artists or by very creative people. They build a symbolic capital intangible capital of the place, and then very slowly the same area, as it gains a value, a money value, then it's taken over again by business, and is taken just for private use. Well, we will be able to continue this conversation. So once again, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to host you here at the ICC. I would like to invite everybody who is still watching us for tomorrow's second day of the conference. We start at 9 o'clock with a lecture of Professor David Throsby from Macquarie University in Australia. And in fact, his topics relates somehow to our recent discussion, heritage-led investment in urban renewal in historic cities. So we'll see what kind of examples we'll be able to listen to tomorrow. As for now, I would like once again thank you very much, wish you a nice evening, and see you soon. Bye.